Steve, any hairspray this week?
No, forgot.
I shouldn't remind you.
No, I
I'm
didn't
sorry.
forget to use it. I just
Okay.
forgot we talked about.
Okay.
No, there has never been product in this hair ever. So they must have
Really?
been talking about yours.
'Cause I mean, like I use it. I use beeswax every day. It's just like
I don't know. You're lucky I can find a comb. Man, if I go some ways and I forget, I'm just hoping it falls in the right place if I
you
flip it
got
open.
good head of hair. You got good
So
hair.
yeah.
All right. Well, that's good. This week's podcast, or the name of this podcast, is called the Stuff Summer Says podcast with
Steve.
and no hairspray. This week on the podcast, we have a couple different things that we need to talk about, including mostly about Penn State hockey. Take a couple of detours along the way, and we happen to have a guest that was perfectly well timed by Steve, who is a former Penn State alum, covers Denver hockey. So it's working out quite well. Our guest this week from the Denver Gazette is Tyler King. He is an alum. Covers a lot of different sports, including but not limited to Denver hockey. But we also spent a pretty decent chunk of our conversation with him on a certain Mr. Deion Sanders and kind of what that's been like to cover. I think this is actually a really fun conversation, even if he's not necessarily a Penn State media folks anymore. Like, I think it's a really interesting conversation just to hear the difference of what the Denver and more so the Colorado beat is like. So take a listen to our interview with Tyler, and we'll be back after this. Steve, we're going to give the booking agent another raise just for how well timed this booking was. We wanted to have Tyler on because he's a Penn Stater. We wanted to talk a little bit about spring football, but he also happens to cover one of the teams in the Frozen Four. Penn State happens to be in the Frozen Four. It's perfect connection. Our guest this week is sports writer from the Denver Gazette, Penn State alum, Mr. Tyler King. Tyler, how are you?
I'm doing great, guys. I appreciate you having me on. Yeah, it could not have worked out better. I'm actually going to be at my first Penn State sporting event since I graduated in 2020 this week, which is pretty wild to think about. But, graduating during COVID, haven't really had a chance to come back to campus, moved out to Colorado shortly after I graduated. And just with what I do and how busy I am, I cover college athletics, so I don't really have a lot of time to get back during the seasons. But yeah, first Penn State sporting event this week since I graduated, so it'll be a fun time in St. Louis.
I was going to ask because you have a pretty wide gambit of teams on your roster, but I couldn't think of many examples where Penn State has either played Colorado, Colorado State, or Denver, really in many sports. So for those that don't know you, Tyler, what do you do out there at the Denver Gazette, and kind of how did you get that role?
Yeah, so I'm our college sports writer. So I cover everything college sports basically across the state of Colorado, mostly focusing on college football and college basketball. I'm more of a basketball guy, so that's kind of what I prefer to do. But yeah, I do a little bit of that. Obviously, with Deion Sanders being out here, that's kind of been my main focus since he got hired in December of 2022. I actually started writing full time before he got hired, so I covered that 1-11 season for Colorado before Coach Prime came to town. So I cover Colorado, Colorado State, like I said, both football, men's basketball, women's basketball. Covered obviously University of Denver hockey, which is what I'll be doing this week at the Frozen Four. I help out our pro sports writers a little bit too, and kind of do a little bit of general assignment stuff. But I'll cover the Nuggets during the playoffs, like I have the last couple of years. Like I got to cover their NBA Finals run 2 years ago, which was really fun. So I've been really lucky, been able to travel and do a lot of really fun stuff the last couple of years. And I was in Seattle recently to cover Colorado State at the men's basketball tournament. I covered the men's basketball tournament last year in Dayton and Indianapolis, and like I said, I've traveled to all of the Colorado football road games the last 2 years since Deion was hired there as well. So been a lot. I'm very busy, but I enjoy it. I wouldn't rather be doing anything else. So
What was what is the difference between covering Penn State, which you covered pretty broadly at Penn State when you worked at the Collegian, to covering all of those teams? What have you noticed is the biggest difference?
it's very different in terms of the size and the style of the beats. Like it's very like Penn State football, which I covered my last 2 years at Penn State in 2018 and 2019, those two seasons. One with the Collegian, and then I was kind of the I kind of helped the Inquirer out my senior year as kind of their intern. I don't really think they even do that anymore. I was one of the last ones pre-COVID to help out the Inquirer, but the Penn State football beat, I've always described it as like a pro football beat. And just with the amount of people that cover the team from all over the state, it's just a really unique beat. And, Boulder is close enough to Denver where all of the Denver outlets really cover CU football, and especially, when it is humming and when it's good. It obviously hasn't been at times in recent years, but it is now, and it's a big time beat, and it's a really unique. It's really unlike anything I've ever seen. There's a lot of fans on the beat, that's for sure. That's a little bit different. I think I'll toot our alma mater's horn, and I don't think there's a journalism school quite like Penn State in this area, so it's a little bit different in that sense. But it has been fun for sure. Like it is especially covering Colorado football. That is an animal unto of itself. Just with a lot of the national people coming in just to cover the thing that just the entity that is Deion Sanders and everything he's brought since really getting into the college football world a couple years ago. That's just really unique, and the people you see on the sidelines and people that find their way into press conferences, it's a really, really strange environment for someone like me, who I had never been to Colorado before I moved out here a couple of years ago. Like, I am born and raised in Pennsylvania. I am a legacy Penn State student. Like, I grew up going to Penn State games, and this is just a very different atmosphere, but one that I've enjoyed. I think there's a lot of really good people out here that cover the teams and that follow the teams. It's been nice getting to know some of the fans from not just Colorado, but Colorado State as well. Air Force is here, so there's a lot of different fan bases, and it's fun to have been a part of the last couple of years, and I certainly will enjoy being a part of it again this fall too.
What are the challenges in terms of coming in and getting used to a new beat? Penn State, like I said, legacy, they're going on. So when you come in and you're starting with a program covering it, how do you get the lay of the land and figure out what you're doing?
Well, the good thing about it is I did not start as a sports writer when I came out here. Obviously, like I said, I graduated in 2020, so nobody was really hiring sports writers at that time, and I had plenty of pages done experience from working at the Collegian. I was the managing editor. During my time there, we went from the 5-day a week to 2-day a week printing schedule, and kind of got rid of the whole designing staff, and the editors kind of wound up doing it. So I got really into that during my time at the Collegian, and I used that skill set to get a job out here at the Gazette, originally designing pages, which I did for the first 2 years. But I kind of made it clear to them here that I wanted to be a sports writer. That's what I wanted. That was always my main goal, and I enjoyed page designing. But any opportunity I could get to help out on the writing side, I took it, and kind of realized we weren't really covering college sports. They always with the Colorado Springs get, they're always covering Air Force in a really close way. But with the Denver edition that had launched, right around when I started, weren't really covering the bigger programs in the state like Colorado and Colorado State, as much as say the Denver Post or just other local outlets. So I felt like there was an area for us to improve our coverage, and just kind of worked my way into that while getting to know the teams, watching whether it's documentaries on CU football, and just kind of learning about all of the programs in the state was kind of my way to do it before I really jumped into it full time. So it kind of was a way to ease into the process. And I was, like I said, I was designing 5 days a week, so putting together sports sections. You're learning about all of the Denver teams as well. So it was just a nice way to kind of get into the atmosphere here, the media atmosphere here in Denver and Colorado at large. So I eased my way into it, but now I feel pretty comfortable. There's obviously some historical stuff that I'm just not going to know, as someone who is still relatively new to the area compared to a lot of people on these beats who have been here for a long time. There are a lot of transplants in Denver in general from around the country, but in the media atmosphere, it's a lot of people that have been here for a long time. So I feel like I've done a pretty good job, earning the respect of people on the beats with my work and things like that. But it was definitely a process at the start of trying to learn all of these teams, besides, like the Broncos and like the Carmelo Anthony Nuggets and all the basic stuff that I had known from being an East Coast kid. But I feel really entrenched now, and I love it. It's been great out here.
When did you feel like you hit your stride? Like how long into that process were you into all right, I got this. I'm comfortable now.
I would say probably that 2023 football season, when I really started going on the road. Because when I first pitched my role for them to make it for me here, I was not doing any traveling, mostly because it didn't really warrant it. Like I was covering college football across the state, whether it was Colorado State, basically going to whoever was home that week, and just kind of I still do a lot of the coverage of both teams, but primarily the Buffs. But I wasn't traveling at all, like I said. So once I started doing that in 2023, going to that TCU game to open the season, that crazy game that Colorado won, and just kind of settling in that regard. That's probably when I felt really comfortable and just feeling like a real sports writer, getting to travel and cover college football every week. And I ended up covering the NCAA tournament that later that season as well. If going to Dayton with both Colorado and Colorado State, staying with the Buffs, they had a crazy game against Florida and that they won. So that was kind of all of that kind of stuff really helped me feel settled into the role. And now it's kind of human nature. Like I said, last month I was at the NCAA tournament in Seattle, and in a couple of days I'll be leaving to go to St. Louis to cover the Frozen Four. So it's all kind of. And last week I was covering Colorado's pro day. Like it's all kind of natural at this point, just rolling with whatever is up next up on the schedule.
When did
It's like every day's pro day out there, isn't it?
yeah?
Yeah. I covered Saquon Barkley's pro day during my time at Penn State, and covering Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter's pro day. I mean, it wasn't they weren't calling it a pro day. There's whole different semantics things, but that was unique. I'll say that for sure. Like last week being there, the whole setup they had, it was nothing like anything I've seen or probably will ever see again in terms of a pro day. That's for sure.
So I assume you went to your editors and made this pitch, but at the same time with that pitch, it was, as you mentioned, right around the same time Deion Sanders is coming in. Did that make the pitch easier to sell
Well,
this
that was
position?
kind of in the summer, and he got hired in December, so it really had nothing to do
Okay.
with Deion Sanders. Like I really did not expect him to get hired. I kind of knew going into that 2022 season that it could go pretty badly for Colorado. Like I didn't think they would be 1-11. Well, I think I predicted them to go like 3-9, and the coach would get fired at the end of the year or whatever. But 5 games in, they're 0-5. They're getting blown out by like 30 points a game, and they fire the coach. And I was putting together a list of candidates, talking to people, thinking who they could hire, and Deion Sanders' name never came up until really like the last week, when it really became kind of real. And then so that just kind of catapulted this position into something I didn't expect to, kind of when I pitched it. I kind of just was like, oh, I'll cover these crappy college football teams and try to make the most of it, tell some stories that, people aren't really people don't read as much. But then it just became this whole other phenomenon quickly after that. So it's definitely, that's definitely quickly changed what I expected my role to be for sure.
Was this year easier or I guess more calm, or was it still because there was
Yeah.
the first year was a media circus in a lot of ways, like nationally it was on everybody's mind. It wasn't necessarily the biggest story this year, but it felt like a big story still. Was this year easier for you?
It was 100% easier. And it's weird because, yeah, they had way more television viewership in 2023 when they won 4 games than they did last season, all of last season when they won 9-4. It really was, it was such a sensation, particularly that first month. Like I remember college game day coming to Boulder, something I never really expected when I got here. Like I covered multiple college game days at Penn State, and coming here, I was like, well, I'm never gonna cover that for a long time. And it happened in 2023, and like Fox's Big Noon was here all the time. They were playing the Big Noon kickoff, which is still Big Noon Eastern time. So it was a lot of 10 a.m. games that first month, and they're playing Oregon, USC, all these big teams, and it really just came to a head that first month. And since then, it's died down a little bit. But last year, I think the winning helped too, because it became more of covering a normal high profile football team, and not just about, okay, this is a circus, but the circus is kind of losing its wheels a little bit in that 23 season, as it's, they start 3-0 and then they go 1-8 the rest of the way. Like it was a really wild and weird season. And at the end of it, you feel like you're writing the same stuff because Deion Sanders is saying the same stuff of like, it's not about this year. It's not about this year. Wait till next year kind of thing. And then last year came, and they were kind of a normal, even a little bit better than even I expected team, just competing for a bowl game. And really had a shot there where I thought they were going to make the Big 12 title game and could have even made the playoff, which would have been hilarious. But it was definitely easier in year two. And I'm actually really fascinated to see what 2025 brings, because this is no longer about Dion and his kids. It's just Dion here now. And, the Suns are going in the NFL. You can count Travis Hunter in that because he's basically Dion's fourth son at this point. So it'll be interesting to see what this year looks like. He just signed a huge extension. So I'll be interested to see like how he treats this season as opposed to the last two, where he's a little bit less invested personally in the personnel that he's got on his team. It'll really be a fascinating season.
Have you been appropriately supportive in your coverage, or how would the coach rate you as among those people, or are you one of those people whose name he didn't say but he was ranting at that we saw and didn't know it was you?
I don't really write any opinion pieces, so I think I'm lucky in that regard, because if I did, I feel like he probably would have some disdain for me. Like I have gotten to know Sean Keeler pretty well, the Denver Post columnist who was, infamously barred from asking questions last season and had the exchange with Coach Prime before the season. It's been really fascinating. Like I said, there are a lot of fans on the beat, not in sort of before maybe Dion, but there are a lot of people that are really invested in the cult of Dion, and it's really such a unique thing that's even different than any other sports team I've been around. And there are just a lot of people that revere Deion Sanders, and these people want to cover it, whether it's with a YouTube channel. It's just there's such an ever-changing media landscape, and it's no more evident than on the CU beat, where I'm just a typical newspaper writer trying to get by in an old school way, where I just have my gamer and a sidebar, and I have some features I work on, and that's kind of it. And I have my own YouTube channel to do some analysis videos, but it's not really my job to rip the program when they're not doing well. We've got columnists to do that, so I've kind of been able to stay out of it in that regard. But I'm certainly not somebody he knows from being a big time rah fan behind the scenes. That's for sure.
Okay, that's good that you're not on a list. That's all we'll say.
Yeah, no, neither good or bad. I'm not on any kind of. Yeah, I'm just kind of in the middle.
You're just keeping your head down, doing your job. I appreciate that. I do want to ask a little bit about Denver hockey, and I want to ask this. Maybe if you could give some context for the people of Penn State, and where Penn State hockey ranks in the pecking order is maybe third or fourth or fifth, depending on who you ask. In terms of football is obviously one, and then basketball, wrestling, volleyball, etc. Yeah. For Denver, though, from what I understand, that it's pretty much the main sport or one of the main sports.
It's number one. Yeah.
What is that? What was that culture like to experience and see that, and kind of compare and contrast that to Penn State?
It's interesting because it's the first non-football school I've really been around, because obviously Denver doesn't have a football team. Their basketball programs are really bad, have not been good for a long time, but they're so good in everything else. Like they're good in lacrosse. They're good in men's soccer. I think they made the Final Four of the men's soccer NCAA tournament this past year. Like lacrosse, they've won national championships. Gymnastics, they've been pretty good recently on the women's side. Like they're really good at everything else except basketball, but hockey is the peak. And that's a program I had known about before coming here. Just with I actually covered a Penn State Denver NCAA tournament game in Allentown. I was freelancing for the Philadelphia Inquirer. I think it was 2018. Would have been my sophomore year at Penn State, and Penn State played against Denver, lost pretty big in Allentown. So I'd known of Denver in the program, but covering it around here is unique because it is such a big deal, but it's not covered heavily at all on a day-to-day basis. So it's kind of one of the few places I've gone where I'm the person there more often than anybody else. Like today we had, I think, myself and two of my colleagues, and then one radio or one TV station in town was at one of their media availabilities today. Like we cover DU hockey kind of better than anybody in the Denver media market, and it's not something people appreciate. Like I feel like we do a pretty good job of covering it and telling all these unique stories. It's not like they have a bunch of NHL draft picks every year. They just kind of churn out the culture and things like that, and they've done a really good job of building sustained success. I mean, you look, they've made more Frozen Four appearances than Penn State has seasons as a varsity hockey program. Like it's just very different to see, Denver is contrasted with Penn State this week, and same thing for like Boston University, a very historic program. Um, College hockey in itself has been really fun to cover, dating back to my time at Penn State, when you're seeing all of these really historic giants, whether it's Denver, Minnesota, Michigan, BU, BC, all these big time programs. And then you've got like a Penn State or an Arizona State that's kind of up and coming and really making their mark in the college hockey space. So it's been fascinating to cover that here as well. And I think it'll be really fun this week as Denver tries to repeat. And they've obviously won more championships than anybody else. Getting their 10th last year, getting past Michigan, and I think they've had a pretty good shot to get 11 this week.
In terms of, you talked about the media availability there locally. When you go to the Frozen Four, teams have game plans, whatever else. How do you treat those big media events and be able to find the stories you want, whether it's without giving somebody else too much, or hey, my market's not seeing their stuff anyway, so I don't care. Like, what's your game plan for those kind of situations as a media member?
I try to get everything done beforehand is really my thing, because a lot of those times they can be really helpful, but also it can be a little bit overwhelming. And I've got my plan for the week. I've had it set in stone. Got a couple of big features I want to do the day before the game, two big features I want to have the day of the game, just kind of typical. And then their typical basic info stuff of, here's a rundown of all the teams in the Frozen Four and their history and all that kind of stuff. So I was trying to provide the widest net of coverage that I can, where it's telling some of these niche stories of some of the individuals on the team, whereas also trying to give context to the overall history of Denver and talking to alumni and things like that, and just trying to find different angles to cover the team, because it kind of is a regularity at this point that Denver not only makes a tournament but makes the Frozen Four. Like I said, it's been over 20 times now that they made the Frozen Four, and they almost always get to the national championship game too. So it's all about trying to find trying to provide the general context that you need, but also trying to find stories that are unique to this particular team. And I think I've got some good stuff lined up for this week. But especially when you get there, it's a lot different than maybe the NCAA men's basketball tournament, where you've got open locker rooms and it's the most access you've had all season. Whereas Denver, it's like they've pretty open all the time. Like I can pretty much get who I need to during the season and tell those stories. Whereas the men's basketball side is like, your open locker room for the first time and all that kind of stuff. So it definitely is interesting to try to plan out and make sure you have everything done ahead of time before you get there, because you're just trying to see what you can get out of something like the Frozen Four.
Give us your skinny preview of the Denver Western Michigan game, if you will. Put you on
goals.
The spot here.
Just expect goals. Okay. These two teams have played each other a bunch this year. They're in the same conference, the NCHC. They actually played in the conference tournament championship game a couple weeks ago. Denver blew a 3-goal lead and lost in double overtime. These are two of the top 5 offenses in the country. Denver has weirdly been really good defensively in the last 2 NC tournaments. I think they haven't allowed more than 1 goal in a single game the last 2 NCAA tournaments. So last year they had a really good run, and this year as well they beat Boston College on the way to getting the Frozen Four. So but Denver's a really, really explosive offensive team, as they often are. But I think the DU Western Michigan game will be filled with goals, and then we'll see what the Penn State BU game brings after it.
I appreciate he didn't give a lean there, but I think we can read a little bit on the Penn State prediction from him a little bit, right, Steve?
Oh, why he didn't give a lean? And
I think there was a little. He put a little more emphasis on Penn State, if you will.
That's what he did. Yeah, okay.
I would not complain about a DU Penn State championship game on Saturday. That's for sure. That would be the first real time doing this professionally that I've had a real conflict of interest in trying to, because I loved covering the hockey program, the little I did during my time at Penn State, just kind of seeing the rise of it in my first couple of years. It was always just a great atmosphere, and it's cool to see that program finally get over the hump and get into the Frozen Four. I mean, I admittedly haven't watched them too much this season with just all that I've got going on, but that was an awesome game in Allentown, that overtime win they had over UConn. And it's fun to see all the good people. It's still Guy Gadowski, like all the people that I remember from my time, that they're all the good people that get rewarded for this. It was pretty cool to see that. But I'm interested to see what the Penn State turnout is this week in St. Louis. I think it'll be pretty big.
Yeah, it's relatively drivable for some. Yeah. All right, Tyler, you're a Penn Stater. We've got three questions to get you before you out of here. They're relatively quick. So we need to know your go-to creamery ice cream flavor.
Okay. Ooh, it's been a while since I've been to the creamery. I was always a peachy paterno guy. I really liked it. I'm more of a milkshake person than a soft or a hard serve ice cream person. So I always used to get a milkshake. And I was always just a basic cookies and cream guy when it came to that. But it's been a while since I've been to the creamery. So I'll go with cookies and cream on the milkshake side and peachy paterno if I got hard serve. So I'll give you two answers there.
I can't tell you how much I appreciate you giving two answers there, because I don't think enough people experience or appreciate the milkshake versus ice cream experience at the creamery, because they're both amazing, but there's a difference.
Yes.
There's an important difference.
They didn't exist there for a while.
That's true.
Somebody,
That's true.
Whatever.
That's true.
Somebody's spouse shut that stuff down.
Yeah. So the next question. You are the czar of Penn State sports for one day and one day only. What change are you making?
Oof, I'm building a new basketball arena.
Okay.
That's what I'm doing, because anybody who knows me knows how much I still care about the Penn State men's basketball program. It's something I have cared about more than the football program for the majority of my life. I'm just a basketball person, and maybe there's something in me about I want to fix a program that is. I love a lovable loser, I guess maybe is that kind of thing as well. But I want the basketball program to succeed so badly. So I'm building a new arena. And I'm finding a way to get $20 million in NIL donations per year for that program to make it the juggernaut it deserves to be, because I absolutely love the Penn State basketball program. When they made the tournament in 23, 2 years ago, I was really hoping they were coming to Denver, because we were one of the host sites for the first round, and I was going to be covering it. I did end up covering it, but they wound up going to Des Moines or whatever. So there's part of me that was really itching for Penn State to get to Denver, because I got denied any chance to cover the NCAA tournament when I was in school.
Right.
Because, I covered the NIT run in 2018, which was awesome. Being courtside at Madison Square Garden was like an unforgettable, event for me. But I still have a vivid memory of driving to the Big Ten basketball tournament in 2020 and getting the email like halfway to Indianapolis that it's canceled. And we all just drive back to State College and that's it. So. And Penn State was going to be like a 6 seed in the NCAA tournament as well. I mean, they were so good. They got up to like number 9 in the country at one point during that season. So that was the best Penn State basketball team of my lifetime. And they got denied the chance to go to the tournament. I was going to go cover it any way I could. So I would definitely, anything to help out Penn State basketball is what I would do if I was the czar of Penn State sports for a day.
I love that. I kind of had forgotten that you were on the beat then. That would have sucked if you were especially driving out in that part of the country, because there ain't much out there. We
were close to the Penn PA Ohio border.
Okay, so you weren't too far, but still, it
was like 2.5, 3 hours into the trip.
That's rough. Okay, your last one is you're back in town for one night and one night only. What bar are you walking into?
Oof. That is, I don't know if it still exists, but I was a sucker for saloon. It was just the dingy, just the dingy dive bar that's around the corner from the First was always what my friends and I would love to go to. And it was never college students that was in there. It was always just State College general population, and that's where we used to always love to go. Part of me wants to say Champs as well, just because I have a lot of great memories watching late night games in the basement of Champs. It was ironic. Like, I have very vivid memories of watching the early days of Nikola Jokic and the Nuggets, like where it's like a 1 a.m. game still on the TV on the East Coast. And now I'm, covering Nikola on a regular basis. So that's probably where I would go. I'll say saloon. And then, probably a bigger spot, probably Champs.
Okay. All right. Appreciate that. Where can people find you and your stuff and all your work?
You can follow me on Twitter or Blue Sky. It's the same handle @King_Tyler B. I actually have my own podcast where I talk basketball in the Mountain Time Zone, from NBA to college, all this stuff. It's called Basketball in the Mountains. And then all my stuff's at denvergazette.com. You can pretty quickly find one of my stories on the sports section, and my profiles on there and everything. So got a lot of stuff coming this week, and looking forward to seeing a lot of Penn Staters in St. Louis. So I appreciate you guys having me on.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us. Steve, I liked hearing about the difference in that beat, particularly the Colorado beat, just because it seems different, it looks different, and it's nice to maybe have confirmation that it really is different, and it's interesting to hear his approach to it, just because I'm sure it would be easy to get caught up in the media hype circus train that is, and I think those more steady voices are very beneficial for readers, consumers, listeners, watchers, etc.
Yeah, I mean, he talked about fans being on the beat a couple times, right? And it's people who are just there to promote what's going on, kind of thing. And it's funny, we've talked before, this beat's soft or that beat, they're not asking tough questions or whatever else. It's interesting to hear from someone saying, well, yeah, this is the people beside me might not have a plan, or their plan might be just to get some money for themselves by supporting what's going on. So no, it was interesting to hear that. And I loved his energy. I mean, he's excited about what he does. He's having a good time. He's certainly busy. So I just think it's interesting to hear that part of it, because it has changed a lot. Like, he's still the newspaper guy covering a team, although he's got his own, Basketball in the Mountains kind of YouTube channel, which I think is cool and great name, and I hope it's working. So yeah, it's finding niches, right? Finding where you fit.
Well, I was just going to say, I love that he went to his staff and basically said, I think that we have this opportunity to go do this thing, like with the college sports role. And I appreciate that he went about it not as a Denver or a Colorado Buffaloes reporter only, or that beat writer only, because he lives in a market that is a little bit more broad. But I think that you sharpen your skills, you broaden your tool chest, if you will, by taking on all these different sports and staying up on all these different sports. And I think that's a good way to get consumers and readers and listeners just engaged, because that adds authority to your voice that, I have covered this, and this. Like, that's a lot of sports that Tyler is covering, and that's a lot of connections that he's making, and that's a lot of people that he knows, and that's a lot of sources that he's developing relationships with, and that's a lot of conversations that, if you're somebody that cares about any of those programs, you want from your beat writer to be informed about. So I thought that was really cool to hear how he went about that, because I feel like oftentimes, and this is no offense, but oftentimes there just isn't that opportunity out there for anybody at Penn State per se, because they're kind of all already set, unless you're like, quote unquote, starting something new or anything like that. So I thought that was really cool. Appreciated his sneaker collection as well. For those wondering, he said he does wear them, so they aren't just for display, but it looked like a pretty nice little collection there.
They had no scuff marks, so nobody's stepping on his new tennis shoes when he goes to school, so that's nice.
That's impressive. All right. Let's see. I think we do need to talk about the news of the day today, which is some sad news, disappointing news. I think more so is a better way to phrase it. Friend of the podcast, Audrey Snyder, tweeted today, "So after 7 years at The Athletic, my time with the company has come to an end. They no longer want to cover Penn State with a full-time beat writer. Proud of the work I did and the stories I told. Thank you to so many who subscribed. Time to figure out what's next." I want to talk about this from a couple different perspectives. I think there's the Audrey perspective of the voice of Audrey and what a great job that she does. I think that's what's frustrating about this. I also want to talk about this because you and I were talking about this earlier today. This is now the third team that I follow, that I have an athletic subscription for, or was the reason why I bought an athletic subscription, that I no longer have a beat writer for, which I think is a little bit frustrating and concerning as more so a sports fan, less sports media fan, if that makes sense. But it was disappointing, I guess would be the best way to sum up really all of this. I think for first and foremost, from the perspective of Audrey and the access that Audrey brings to us, the reader, I think she's one of the best, if not the best on the beat. I said today, she is the first person that I read Sunday mornings after a game. I have a list of people that I go through, and I want to know what they think. I think very few people, and I mean this complimentary, did a nice muckraking job, as the car alarm goes off, a muckraking job of covering Penn State. She got in there and uncovered things and made you aware of things and did a true journalism job that I think not that anybody else isn't doing that per se, but when Audrey did it, you just paid attention a little bit more. And I hope, with her being laid off or whatever this situation is, I hope that she stays on the beat, because if she goes away, the Penn State media voice is less valuable without her on it. And I also think, and you could see this from a lot of people that are Tyler's age or Johnny McGonagall's age, of the number of people she's helped foster and grow because she's been such a good advocate for people on the beat. I think that's also a big part of this. That's why today really stung for somebody that cares about sports media, and then particularly Penn State sports media. I'm going to let you go, and then I'll get back to the other larger athletic point.
Hers is and was or is, if she continues something, find a way, a voice that matters on the beat, right? It's not someone who's going to be influenced only by what she's fed. I mean, she did a great job on off weeks of going to do stories about something else, or getting interviews for something down the line, or using her late summer to prepare to do a feature on somebody else so she could have it in the can for whatever. It wasn't just reactionary. Here's the news conference. Here's what's going on. It was thoughtful, prepared, solid on the reporting side and on the football X's and O's side. So it's a loss for fans on the beat. And I know people say, well, I get other stuff all these places. And you can, but she was really good at what she does and is really good at what she does. So it's a shame that voice isn't likely going to be there in the same way it was before. And for me too, I look at the Athletic maybe more for sports media stuff sometimes as a second thing, but for Penn State, I mean, I would go to her and say, okay, what's going on? Like this would be the place that gave me some context, especially because I'm probably not into it as recruiting deeply as many people are, and because she probably wasn't there as deeply as other people because she didn't need to be. That wasn't so much her bailiwick in terms of, oh, this person's coming, this person's, moving. I think when the transfer portal opens and some high profile person transfers, she would have been the one that gave me context and perspective more so than they're gone. And I think we're going to notice that in a week or so when something like that happens.
I think that's what I am concerned about writ large, in particular, because Ben Jones is doing his thing now, and he provided that. And this isn't to say that Rich or Wogo or anybody, Johnny in particular, they all provide that level of context. And I think I have a more comfortability with Audrey in the way she wrote, and she did, as you pointed out there, she did a really great job of providing that bigger picture context. While also, I think my favorite parts of the summer would be when I would shoot her a DM and she would say something, oh, I'm out here and here doing this thing. And it's like, okay, now I'm excited because I know there's going to be a good, the Drew Aller feature stories. That was that going back to the Athletic thing is, I think that's the whole model of the Athletic, right? We're not going to write the game story. We're going to give you the sidebar as the game story. They have moved the market space in sports media from that. I think that is what the Athletic is, the biggest thing that they have done. I think they I don't know if they started it, but they at least accelerated it. For someone that I'm still keeping my subscription to the Athletic because there's still a Steelers beat writer. But I saw a lot of people that if you don't have a team specific beat writer or just had it for Penn State, I understand why people are canceling, because that voice, I can go get that other places. I think in some ways
you're not getting the extra stuff. You can get the other stuff anyway.
Yeah,
right.
And I think if you're not going to celebrate that, and I think that's what makes this so disappointing, is this is now the Pirates, the Lightning, and now Penn State, three of my teams that. They haven't either been backfilled or said, we're not doing this anymore. What is the point? If I can get national stuff anywhere, I can get national stuff anywhere. And there's a lot of unpaywalled or paywalled at different places, creative national stuff out there that I don't know what the selling point anymore for the Athletic is for me, aside from the Steelers stuff right now. And I think that's what I am struggling with. And I think what does not make sense about this at all is this is not like we were talking about Indiana football that was a flash in the pan over the 1 year, right? It was one really good year. This is Penn State football, which I understand isn't necessarily like if you want to say quote unquote top elite program, but in terms of the number of people that go to the games, the number of alums, the number of just sheer great stories that come out of the Penn State football beat, like it feels like a bad decision because there is a market there and there is this opportunity there to not covering that just as the leader in the market space is really disappointing, I think, for a lot of fans, myself included.
It feels like there's a market there, right? And I think her quality would say, you should find my content. But are the pay sites and other things, are enough people invested in those that maybe they're not getting? And I guess maybe, I don't know, she would know, or the people that made the decision, I guess would hopefully know, you're not getting enough traffic for us to merit continuing to do it, right? Like that's the only thing that I don't know in this whole thing is like, what were the athletics numbers or metrics in terms of saying,
Right.
oh, this is successful or not? Because there are 2 or 3 pay sites, plus, statecollege.com is free, right? There's a couple places. If you're not doing the athletic, she's got to be worth it to you. And for me, she was part of what's worth it. So I'm not saying that, but maybe the people that are upset are athletic people and they're not athletic subscribers who aren't doing other things. I don't know. It would be interesting to get a sense of crossover for that kind of stuff and whatever else. But it feels like a bad decision editorially for those of us that were served by her stuff. I just don't know how big the market is for people to pay for a couple different places to get their stuff. And maybe enough. I don't know.
But I don't know if that's the issue, because going back to like the numbers, and obviously we don't have those here. And so this is a little bit hard to debate per se. But I struggle with thinking, for how rabid Penn State fans are, there are 7 schools that are ahead of Penn State in terms of readership, right? Like I think Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, maybe that's the bias in me, but I don't know. I can't think of the other beat writers that they have that I just it's weird to pull out Penn State of that mix, so to speak, I guess is the point I'm getting at there.
Yeah, no, I think if you thought of a fan base or a program that had enough for people to be interested, Penn State would be one of them.
Right.
Yeah.
It's and that's why I say like it's not Indiana football. It's not a flash in the pan. It's not something that was small a year ago, 2 years ago that is kind of bigger now. It's growing.
Although maybe it's like the TV ratings thing, right? Maybe they're good, but not really good. Maybe they're good, but not elite in terms of consuming stuff.
Yeah. I would be interested to know, but I still think it's a disappointing decision when you look at the contemporaries around the country, and then you think about what last season was for Penn State, let alone what this season could be for Penn State. There,
and it was for me, it was one of the most cost-effective follows, right? Because I was getting other stuff from the Athletic, so in terms of following them, it was probably the most cost-effective way to follow Penn State and still be able to get some other stuff, as opposed to Penn State specific things where I don't need all that. And maybe I don't need the recruiting, and maybe I don't need maybe any little bit different tone or whatever else to whatever she's doing.
Yeah. Yeah. I know you're not a big message board guy either. And that's something I enjoy, but yeah. She did, or John Sauber said that they are going to continue with their Nittany Extra podcast, which I think is quite good. Be sure to check, Nittany Dispatch. I think be sure to check that out. If you're still looking for Audrey's stuff, who knows? If Audrey's listening, I hope that she knows that a lot of us are advocating for her voice to stick around on the beat, which I think at least it will a little bit with Nittany Dispatch. So, okay, good. Anything else?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
great.
All right, let's talk about Penn State men's hockey. They are playing in the Frozen Four, as we have discussed at length, both last week and now this week with Tyler King a little bit. I was thinking about this. Here's what I was thinking about. Remember last year during the college football playoff when Penn State, a lot of people were like, this is Penn State's best chance to win a national championship, in the sense of like the way the seeding broke out, and they played SMU and they played Boise, and they had a pretty good chance to beat Notre Dame. And I hate to kind of compare the two, but I'm starting to kind of understand that logic a little bit more, or feel that way a little bit more about I kind of expect Penn State men's hockey to go to St. Louis with well, we're here, we might as well win type attitude, because I think that's maybe the attitude they've had in a lot of ways. We might as well do this type deal, and I think that would be where I'm at. I think the tougher task right now is beating Boston University, probably the third best team that they've played all season. But they've also beat the two teams I would consider to be ahead of that in Michigan State and Minnesota this year. And I guess you could make the case on Maine as well. I think if they played offensively like they played against Maine, I think they will be fine. I think the biggest thing, and I think you'll probably talk about this a little bit this week, is Aiden Fink probably needs to have the Aiden Fink of the regular season game as opposed to an Aiden Fink postseason game for them to take any hardware or have a chance to even take any hardware home. He's been goalless pretty much during the postseason between the NCAA tournament and then the Big Ten championships or Big Ten tournament. So I think that's where they need some support. It's about where I'm at with it.
I further in terms of best chance, from the Penn State football team, and comparing it, not so much if we're here, we might as well do it, but it's harder for a team to get to the Frozen Four than it is to get to the 12-team college football playoff. It feels like for Penn State anyway, for the Penn State athletic program, the football team being one of the 12 feels like that's got a better shot on a regular basis than the hockey team being one of the 4. Not as a shot to hockey. It's just a tougher thing.
No, I think it's reasonable.
So yeah, I think this is. I don't know if they're thinking why not, because I do believe that it's not, that they're not BS and that it's just kind of business as usual. We just got to keep winning. We got to keep our heads down, because they are a fairly, humble isn't the right word, but workmanlike team. Like they're just kind of workmanlike. They do what they're supposed, and that's why the 0-9 when the start didn't freak them out. Like it was ugly and bad, but they were like, okay, this isn't as bad. We'll be okay. Okay, this isn't as bad. We'll be okay. So no, I wouldn't be surprised if they played well. I wouldn't be surprised if they won. So yeah, I'm interested to see what happens. And I think Aiden Fink is important. At the same time, I think for them, if they were to overtly try to get him out of his goal scoring slump, that would be wrong. Like it's just going to have to happen. And I think that's one of the things in my so not deep hockey knowledge, right? Guy not messing with his lines late in the game in the regional championship, right? Running the lines out there, letting them play. I think that instills some confidence in players, right? Like he's not going to shorten things up and focus on these guys. We are a team. And I think that's a both subtle and overt message when that kind of thing happens. So I think they're in good shape, and you have to be excited. You have to be excited just that they're there. But I guess in the back of my mind, that whole 8-3 Ohio State game is a little scary from what BU can do or did. But I don't know that I would expect. I guess I'd be really surprised if something like that happened.
So that game to me, and I forget their goaltender's name, the Ohio State goaltender that was in that day, and I blanking on his name right now. But that game to me was, for as much as Ohio State stole that game from Penn State in the Big Ten semifinals, it was kind of like he lost them that game against BU, because that was when they gave up a goal. Pretty much when they gave up the kind of go-ahead goal, the dam broke, if you will. And I think the one thing that's been fascinating about Penn State this year is and we saw it in the regional final, when they've been hit with a roadblock or they've been hit with a little bit of adversity, they have not panicked. They could have panicked in that UConn game. I think that's a great example. Hell, they could have panicked in that Maine game when they go down 1-0 to start that game. And I think I can't think of a time really since the run started all the way back at at the frozen confines, and if you want to start it, say it started then, which even started, I guess, on a shootout loss. Like, I think every time they've been faced with adversity, I think they've handled it. What is fascinating is they've handled it to a level that would make you think that they are a more tenured team in terms of their go-to guys, right? Charlie Serrato, JJ Webush, Aiden Fink, or even Arseny Sergeyev. Like, I think that crew, that crew has handled it just as well as Carson Dick, Simon Mack, the older class guys that have been around and know when things hit the fan, how to step to the right direction, if you will.
Yeah, and I guess that's for me. That's why I enjoy it and just do it. Like going back, it's almost kind of like 2016 now with another football thing. That was so unexpected and people didn't think it was going to happen. Go ahead and just enjoy this because you don't know when you're getting back. Right. Leave it out there and just have a good time. So I think they'll do that. Like I just talking to some players, the players they provided us today, and body language, and just reading between the lines of stuff and listening overtly to things people say. Like it doesn't feel like they're giving lip service to who they are and talking about what they are. This is the team. This is their identity, and they're going to go out there and play the best they can, and it may turn out well for them.
Yeah, well, that's a good way to put it.
You watching at home?
We'll be watching the Frozen Four at home,
Okay.
but we will see what happens in terms of Saturday. That's all I will say.
Okay. Do you have like any viewing, a chair and a tire, anything at all for hockey?
No. We've talked about this before. I struggle with Penn State hockey fandom because I covered the team, right? But I have let down that guard a little bit. This year's helped me let down that guard a little bit. That being said, it's not like like during the NHL playoffs. It's bad. And this is on our list of things to discuss this summer when there's nothing else to discuss. I want to go through superstitions, which is probably we should have like a therapist on here so they can diagnose me with like a OCD or something. Because that one's bad. Like that's like if the candle was lit that night, we got to light the same candle. But if they lose, then we don't light the candle the next night, and there's a lot.
Well, it can't go too many nights because at some point the candle's going to burn down.
No, see that I bought multiple candles. I still have at least two of the candles that the Lightning won their last Stanley Cup with. Like,
what's the scent?
It's the salted.
It's not sweaty hockey. Oh, it's
salted pretzel milkshake. Yeah, it's just an incredible candle. So that's bad. One of the things, speaking of having some fun, I do appreciate that Penn State is really done a nice job celebrating the moment. Penn State hockey's done a nice job celebrating the moment this year. I think if you haven't seen any of the riffs of the This Is Sports Center commercials, which are they're doing This Is Hockey Valley, this is legitimately some of the best social media work the Penn State athletics has put together in years. I genuinely believe that. There was a one of Matt DeMarsico practicing throwing his sticks over. There was I believe it was Charlie, either Dane Doyak or Charlie Serrato doing some weightlifting to prepare for his celebration. And then this morning we got Arseny Sergeyev has a tooth missing, and he asked a certain guy Gadowski about that, which if you know the backstory there, you know why that is so funny. Just because I think the guy is I love him, and but he's very anxious about that tooth, and the time he walked into the press room and we all realized that he didn't have a tooth in there and asked, he was like, "Oh God, I didn't realize it was a hallmark moment of reactions." So yeah, no, I thought that was good.
Yeah, if you haven't trolled, and I think you're correct. I think you're generous to give credit to Penn State athletics for that. Maybe I'm biased and I'm not totally informed. So if someone knows differently, call me out. I think John Hanna is the brainchild of all of those. I think he's the man pulling the strings on those. So credit to him because he's doing a lot of stuff, right? He's the strategic sports communications guy for hockey. So he's doing media requests this week. He's doing that kind of stuff. I think he gets a lot of the credit for those. I don't know how deep the team is that ideated them. It might have been a big group that executed them. But in terms of creativity, I think that's a lot, John. So kudos to him. And if you haven't seen This Is Hockey Valley, on the hockey team socials. Go take a look.
Yeah, they've done a nice job. Okay. Anything else? I guess we're good.
No.
Okay. What do you?
No, I'm excited. I think I'm going to Pagula because this is
Okay.
this is the latest example of cutting off YouTube TV and not expecting,
Oh, he did
right?
unintended consequences. Yeah.
We gave it up after the Super Bowl and here we are. So I think I'll go to Pagula and take that in because that's definitely something that's hasn't had that is a watch party for a Penn State national championship level competition is something I've never experienced before. So why not?
I can't think of many others. I think that was
Right.
good. I think that was a really good call for a lot of reasons.
Yeah, I might have to get there early. I mean, I think people will be excited. Like
Yeah.
I'm be kind of interested. Even that, I'm just kind of interested to see the reaction. So
Yeah, cool. Okay, this week's old guy, young guy. You brought up how did you phrase this to me? Something about windows and screens.
what about windows and screens? It's in old guy world. It's
Back in my day.
It's time to put the screens in the windows because we took them out for the winter and fall. Is that something that happens at your household?
Why did you take them out? What is the logic behind taking them out?
I don't know. Like we've always done it. See, this is interesting because I thought about. I knew you were going to ask me that. I think we take them out because it's cold. There's not going to be any more bugs that you're keeping in, right? And also because the screens are dark, right? I think you get more light because days are shorter. If you take the screens out, you get more light in the windows, more light because it's not as bright out. Like I don't know. I assume we took them out. I assume my parents took them out because there were no more bugs and it was cold. Yeah, I didn't have to have screens in. And so then you put the screens back in the spring. We've always swapped them out seasonally. I don't know why. Maybe I'm totally wrong for whoever's still listening to us then to this point. Maybe I've been wasting that effort for years.
I don't know on that one, man. That's interesting.
So the screens never left your windows, right?
At this house, no. Now,
Okay.
I will say, at the house that my mom lives in, that I grew up in, the front door has a screen during the summer, but then during the winter it has a glass pane that is
Right. That
very
the screen
heavy.
screws out and the pane goes in. Yeah. I think it's the same process.
Okay.
We just take out the screens and the window's still there. I just assumed we did it because, we weren't going to be opening the windows up in the winter when it was 40 degrees. So you didn't need to cut the screen in, but I guess you probably need to take it out either. But I don't know.
I didn't know that you needed to take it out. I guess would be the lesson that I'm learning.
If you're still with us to this point, if you're Darian's mom still with us to this point because she is at least the one who's this far in, or someone else, let us know.
Because the reason I asked was like we had the windows open the other day. Like we don't do that very often. We are pretty much a windows like. We have AC and heat for a reason, and I don't mind paying that.
Mr. Carrier invented that AC for a reason, right?
Yeah, like I don't mind using it. That being said, I don't know that I've ever thought, oh, it is winter. I need to go and take the screens out. Like
I take them all out except for like one or two, right? Like because then, like just in case, like at Thanksgiving, the in-laws are going to be here, the kitchen's going to be hot, the Italian women are going to get hot. We got to be able to leave one window open so we can like get a breeze coming through, but still have a screen there in case there's still some bugs alive late in the fall. I don't know. Maybe I'm totally wrong. As I say this out loud, I feel like perhaps.
Do you understand the logic I'm getting at here? I think it's an extra chore that
a little extra bit of work. I know.
To do, and I don't think.
But see, when you take the screen out, right, there's dirt on the ledge on the outside that you can clean that off. Then that'll be cleaner too. So.
Okay.
I'll go up and ask the boss why I take the screens out, and I'll find out.
Because I will say I've been to your house in the summer, and I think you've had the screen, the not summer, but like in the spring, and the windows have been open.
The screens are yes, but only for a while because we have heat and AC for a reason too.
Okay,
like it's not like the 50 in the summer when it gets there. That's sleeping weather. You can open the windows up, but before that, like 64 at night or 65. If it's not getting cold enough, then I'm not allowed to open the windows because it's not going to be cold enough to sleep. Just turn the AC.
Oh, see, that's how I am. It's got to be. I could sleep if it was 32 degrees in this house.
Right. Well, I'm just add a blanket. I'm told exactly.
Yeah, that's exactly what they're there for. All right, that's this week's podcast. Thanks to Tyler for joining us. Really appreciated that. Thought that was a fun conversation. We'll have stuff this week about the Frozen 4. We will have stuff about that. I think that will be pretty well heavily featured on the blog. We got that. You in fact, you already had something this week. Appreciated that. Thought that was good. Finally got to use some code that I had used for what I was going to use for the college football playoff, and then it was just too complicated, but got to use that at the bottom, little bracket in there. That's right. We're high tech now.
That was pretty cool.
Yeah. See. Other than that, the website is called stuffsummersays.com. On that website, there's a section called With
Steve.
By the way, I think next week we will have the Hall of Fame results. I believe next week we will have the Hall of Fame results. Steve has sent me his. We know who the finalists are. Steve and I know who the finalists are. They are under lock and key. That being said, Steve has written his stuff. I'm slacking, per usual. Anyways, that's on the website. That will be on the website. We already promoted the website. We have emails. We got a great email last week that I'm still trying to find out the answer to. So hopefully we can answer that one on air. But my email is Darian at stuffsummersays.com. Steve's is
Steve at stuffsummersays.com.
Okay. You can find me on the internet at Stuff Summer Says.
And I am at Steve Samsel.
See you. Bye.